On the night Alpha Kale rejected his human mate, the entire pack believed the story they were told. That she was weak, that she was dangerous, that she was never meant to belong among wolves. But no one noticed the moment her eyes turned silver under the full moon. No one saw the ancient mark burn across her wrist. And no one realized that by rejecting her, Alpha Kale had just awakened something the werewolf world had feared for centuries. Because the girl he humiliated before the entire pack was the one woman destined to awaken the Wolf King. And by the time he learned the truth, she was already standing beside his greatest rival. Arya grew up near the territory of the Black Ridge Pack. The people in the nearby villages avoided the forest that surrounded the pack's land. They spoke of strange things happening there. Livestock sometimes disappeared. Footprints too large to belong to wolves appeared after storms. And on certain nights, the sound of howling echoed across the mountains in a way that made even the bravest hunters turn back. But Arya never feared the forest. In fact, she felt drawn to it. From the time she was a child, animals behaved differently around her. Birds would land near her feet without fear. Injured creatures that normally fled from humans would allow her to touch them. Even wild wolves that occasionally wandered near the village never attacked when she was nearby. The villagers whispered about her. Some believed she was cursed. Others believed she had simply spent too much time alone in the woods. But the truth was something no human in the village could possibly understand. Every time the full moon rose, something inside Arya changed. She felt it in her chest first, a strange warmth, then a quiet pull, like the forest itself was calling her deeper into its shadows. At night, she would stand near the edge of the trees and stare toward the mountains where the Black Ridge Pack lived. She never knew why. She only knew that the forest felt more like home than the village ever did. For years, the werewolves of Black Ridge ignored the nearby humans. The pack had strict laws. Humans were to be avoided at all costs. Contact could expose their existence, and exposure meant war. But fate had a way of ignoring rules. Because on one particular night, everything changed. It happened during the harvest moon. The pack had gathered deep within their territory for a sacred ritual that only occurred once every decade. Every wolf in the pack was present. Warriors, hunters, the council elders, and at the center of it all stood the leader of Black Ridge, Alpha Kale. Kale was not just strong. He was feared. Tall, broad-shouldered, and known for defeating rival alphas long before he reached his 30th year, Kale had built Black Ridge into one of the most powerful packs in the region. But power came with responsibility. And on that night, the pack council expected something important to happen. Because Kale had never taken a mate. For an alpha, that was unusual. The pack believed the moon would reveal his destined mate during the ceremony. But no one expected what actually happened. Far from the ritual clearing, Arya had wandered deeper into the forest than ever before. She didn't plan to. She didn't even realize how far she had walked. But the closer she came to the mountains, the stronger the strange pull in her chest became. It felt like something or someone was calling her. The air felt heavier under the moonlight. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Then she heard something. Voices. Low voices carried by the wind. Arya slowly pushed through the trees until she reached the edge of a wide clearing. What she saw froze her in place. Dozens of people stood in a large circle beneath the moon. But something about them was wrong. Their posture, the way they moved, the way their eyes reflected the moonlight. Arya didn't know it yet, but she had just stepped into the heart of the Black Ridge Pack. And in the center of the circle stood Alpha Kale. The moment Kale's eyes lifted toward the edge of the clearing, time seemed to stop. He saw her, a human girl standing among the trees. But something deeper than sight struck him at that moment. His wolf surged forward inside his mind. Not in anger, not in warning, but in recognition. Mate. The word hit him like thunder. His body went rigid. His breathing slowed. For the first time in years, the powerful alpha of Black Ridge looked genuinely shaken. Across the clearing, Arya felt it too. A sudden force in her chest. Her heart began pounding harder than it ever had before. And for reasons she could not explain, her eyes locked onto the man standing at the center of the gathering. The entire pack noticed the shift immediately. Wolves were extremely sensitive to mate bonds, and the energy in the clearing had changed. Murmurs began spreading through the crowd. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, because they had all seen where the alpha was looking, at the human girl. The council leader stepped forward slowly. His voice cut through the silence. Alpha, what have you found? Kale did not answer immediately. Inside his mind, his wolf was pushing forward violently. Mate, mate, mate. The bond was undeniable. The moon had chosen. But there was one problem. A massive problem. Arya was human. And, according to the oldest laws of Black Ridge, an alpha could never take a human mate. Not without risking the destruction of the entire pack. Kale's jaw tightened. The council was watching. The warriors were watching. Every wolf in Black Ridge waited for his decision. For a moment, no one spoke. Then something unexpected happened. A figure standing just behind Kale quietly stepped forward. It was the beta, the second in command of the pack. His name was Lucian. And although most wolves respected him, very few truly understood him. Lucian leaned slightly closer to the alpha and spoke in a voice only Kale could hear. Careful, he whispered. Kale didn't move. Lucian's eyes flicked toward the girl at the edge of the clearing. A human mate would destroy your authority, he continued quietly. Think about the council. Think about the pack. Kale remained silent. But inside his mind, a battle was raging. Because the pull toward Arya was growing stronger every second. It was the kind of bond no wolf could ignore. Yet the entire pack was watching him. Waiting, judging. Lucian's voice came again, softer this time. If you claim her, you will lose everything. The alpha's fist slowly clenched. Across the clearing, Arya had no idea what was happening, but she could feel the tension building. Dozens of unfamiliar eyes stared at her, and the man at the center of the gathering, the one she could not stop looking at, now wore an expression she could not understand. It wasn't anger. It wasn't hatred. It was something far more complicated. Fear. The council leader spoke again. Alpha Kale, who is the girl? The silence that followed felt endless. Kale finally took a step forward. The entire pack held its breath, because everyone believed they knew what was about to happen. The moon had revealed his mate. The alpha would claim her. That was how the ritual always ended. But Kale stopped halfway across the clearing. His gaze hardened. And then, with the entire pack watching, he made a decision that would change the fate of Black Ridge forever. He spoke only 3 words. She is nothing. The clearing exploded into shocked murmurs. At the edge of the forest, Arya felt something inside her chest crack. The strange warmth she had felt moments earlier suddenly twisted into pain. She didn't understand why, but hearing those words hurt more than anything she had ever experienced. Kale turned his back on her. Remove the human from our territory, he ordered coldly. Warriors immediately began moving toward the trees. Arya stepped backward, fear finally breaking through the confusion. But as she turned to run, something strange happened. The moonlight hit her eyes, and for the briefest moment, they flashed silver. No one noticed. No one except one person. Lucian. Beta's expression darkened as he watched the human girl disappear into the forest. Because in that single flash of silver light, he had just seen proof of something the pack was never supposed to discover. And if the alpha ever learned the truth, Lucian would lose everything he had spent years building. Behind him, Kale stood motionless beneath the moon, trying to ignore the one thing he could still feel deep inside his chest. The mate bond, still alive, still pulling him toward the girl he had just rejected. But far away in the dark forest, Arya collapsed to her knees. Her heart raced violently, her vision blurred. And beneath the silver moonlight, a faint glowing mark slowly began to appear on her wrist. A mark that had not existed before that night. A mark tied to an ancient legend. One that spoke of a power far older than any pack. The power of the Wolf King. And unknown to everyone in Black Ridge. The moment Alpha Kale rejected his true mate, that power had just begun to awaken. In the days that followed the night of the harvest moon, the Black Ridge pack believed they had witnessed a simple event. A human girl had wandered too close to sacred territory. The Alpha had rejected her, and the matter was finished. That was the story the pack accepted. But like many stories told within powerful packs, the truth was far more dangerous. Because the rejection of Arya had not been a sudden decision. It had been carefully prepared. Long before the harvest moon ceremony began, someone had already ensured that the Alpha would see the human girl as a threat rather than a mate. That someone was Beta Lucian. To the warriors of Black Ridge, Lucian was loyal, disciplined, and calm under pressure. He had fought beside Alpha Kale in numerous battles against rival packs. Many wolves believed he would one day become one of the strongest betas the region had ever seen. But loyalty was not the force that guided Lucian's decisions. Power was. Lucian had spent years building influence inside Black Ridge. The council respected his judgment. The warriors trusted his strategies. Even Alpha Kale relied on him more than anyone else in the pack. But Lucian carried a secret fear that had grown stronger with every passing year. A fear born from an ancient prophecy. Few wolves within Black Ridge even knew the prophecy existed. It was not spoken during rituals. It was not shared with young wolves. Only the elders and those closest to the Alpha had ever heard the full words. The prophecy was older than the pack itself, passed down through generations of Alphas. And it spoke of a power that had once ruled the entire werewolf world. The Wolf King. According to the legend, centuries ago, a single Alpha possessed strength beyond any other wolf. His power did not come only from physical dominance. It came from something far more mysterious, the blood of his mate. Together they ruled over packs across the northern mountains, ending wars and forcing rival Alphas to bow beneath a single throne. But the Wolf King vanished long ago. Some believed he had been killed. Others believed he had simply disappeared into the wilderness. But the prophecy claimed something else. It claimed the Wolf King would return, not through reincarnation, not through magic, but through blood. The prophecy said, the Wolf King will rise again through the chosen Alpha, but only when his mate awakens the ancient blood. For centuries, those words meant nothing to the wolves of Black Ridge. No Alpha had ever displayed signs of becoming the Wolf King. No mate had ever awakened the ancient bloodline. The prophecy had slowly become little more than a forgotten legend, until Alpha Kale was born. Even as a young wolf, Kale had shown unusual strength. He defeated older warriors during training. His senses were sharper than any wolf his age. By the time he reached adulthood, rival packs already feared his name. The elders began to whisper. Some believed Kale might be the Alpha mentioned in the prophecy. But even if that were true, one condition still remained. His mate. Only the right mate could awaken the ancient power. And that was where Lucian's fear began. Because if the prophecy came true, Kale would become more than just an Alpha. He would become a king. And if Kale became king, the entire structure of the pack would change. Council authority would fade. Beta influence would disappear. Everything Lucian had spent years building would become meaningless. So Lucian began searching for answers long before the harvest moon ceremony. He studied old texts hidden inside the pack archives. He spoke privately with the oldest elders. And eventually he discovered something that terrified him. The ancient bloodline mentioned in the prophecy was extremely rare. It was called silver blood. According to the records, those who carried it displayed unusual traits. Animals obeyed them instinctively. Their presence affected the balance of the forest. And when their power awakened, their eyes sometimes glowed silver beneath the full moon. Lucian read those descriptions many times, because weeks before the harvest moon ceremony, something strange had already happened. While scouting near the edge of the territory, Lucian had encountered a human girl in the forest. She had been helping an injured wolf pup trapped beneath fallen branches. Instead of running when he appeared, she had calmly stepped aside. The wolf pup had crawled toward her rather than away from her, and for a brief moment, Lucian had seen something impossible. The pup lowered its head, almost like it was bowing. Lucian had said nothing, but he watched the girl leave the forest that day. He remembered her face, her calm voice, and the strange feeling in the air around her. When he later discovered the girl's name was Arya and that she lived in the nearby human village, something cold settled in his mind. Because the signs matched the prophecy, Lucian began watching her from a distance. Over several nights, he confirmed his suspicions. Animals gathered near her without fear. Wolves passing through the outer territory did not grow aggressive in her presence. And during one full moon, he saw the faint silver glow in her eyes. That was when Lucian made his decision. Arya could never be allowed near the Alpha. If Kale discovered the bond between them, the prophecy might unfold. And if the prophecy unfolded, Lucian would lose control of everything. So, he began preparing his plan. Weeks before the harvest moon ceremony, Lucian quietly approached several council members. He told them disturbing information. A human girl had been seen repeatedly near pack territory. She behaved strangely around wolves. He suggested the possibility that she was connected to an enemy pack using human spies. At first, the council doubted him, but Lucian did not rely on words alone. He brought evidence. Letters supposedly written between Arya and members of a rival pack. Maps showing hidden paths into Black Ridge territory. Witness statements from scouts claiming the girl had been seen speaking with unknown wolves. The council examined the evidence carefully. None of them realized it had all been forged. Lucian had spent weeks creating those documents. By the time the harvest moon ceremony arrived, the council had already reached a quiet conclusion. The human girl was a potential threat. When Alpha Kale eventually sensed the mate bond that night, the council was ready. They watched him closely, waiting to see if he would risk the future of the pack for a human. And standing beside him the entire time was the one wolf who had arranged everything, Lucian. The moment Kale hesitated during the ceremony, Lucian whispered the words that pushed the Alpha toward rejection. Careful. Think about the council. Think about the pack. Lucian knew exactly how Kale's mind worked. The Alpha always placed the safety of the pack above his personal desires. Lucian used that loyalty as a weapon. And when Kale finally rejected the human girl before the entire pack, Lucian felt a quiet sense of victory. The prophecy had been stopped. The Wolf King would never rise. Or, at least, that was what Lucian believed. Because there was one part of the prophecy he had misunderstood. Rejecting the mate did not destroy the ancient bloodline. It only delayed its awakening. Far away from the Black Ridge territory, Arya sat alone beneath the forest trees, still struggling to understand the pain she felt in her chest. The faint glowing mark on her wrist had grown brighter. The silver light within her eyes had not faded completely. And somewhere deep within the mountains, wolves had begun to grow restless. They did not know why. They did not know what had changed. But something ancient had stirred in the world that night. And the longer Arya remained away from Black Ridge, the stronger that ancient force continued to grow. After the harvest moon night, Arya did not return to the village immediately. At first, she couldn't. Her body kept moving through the forest without direction, like something inside her had broken but not fully collapsed. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the ground itself was rejecting her presence. She did not understand what had happened. Only that one moment still echoed in her mind. She is nothing. The Alpha's voice was cold, detached, final. And yet, the pain it caused was anything but simple. Arya eventually reached the edge of the human village just before dawn. But she did not enter. She stopped at the boundary where the forest ended and civilization began. For the first time in her life, the trees behind her no longer felt welcoming. They felt like they were watching her leave. That was the moment Arya disappeared from Black Ridge territory. Not because she was taken, not because she was chased, but because something inside her no longer belonged to either world. In the days that followed, Arya tried to return to normal life. She told herself it was just rejection, just humiliation, just a cruel moment that would fade with time. But her body began to betray her in ways she could not explain. It started with the moonlight. At night, when silver light poured through her window, Arya would wake up suddenly, not from fear, but from pain. It felt like the light itself was pressing against her skin, burning softly wherever it touched her. At first, she thought it was imagination, until she noticed faint marks appearing on her arms after every full moon. Thin lines, almost like symbols, almost like something was trying to write itself onto her body. Then came the strength. One afternoon in the village, a heavy wooden cart collapsed near the marketplace. Several men rushed to lift it, but the wheel had snapped beneath its weight. Without thinking, Arya stepped forward and lifted it. Not slightly, not barely. She lifted it completely off the ground long enough for the trapped boy beneath it to crawl out safely. The entire marketplace went silent. Arya dropped the cart in shock. She had never been strong. Not like that. Not even close. But no one dared question it openly, because something about her had changed. Even the animals reacted differently now. Dogs avoided her gaze. Birds no longer landed near her. And when she walked through narrow paths, people instinctively stepped aside without knowing why, as if something about her presence no longer belonged to the human world. The dreams began on the 7th night after her disappearance. At first they were fragments, dark forests, endless moonlight, and the sound of distant howling. But slowly, the images became clearer. Arya would find herself standing in the center of a vast forest she had never seen before. And in front of her, wolves. Dozens. Then hundreds. All of them are silent. All of them kneeling. Their heads lowered as if acknowledging something far greater than fear. But Arya was always alone in those dreams. She would look down at her hands and see silver light flowing beneath her skin like rivers. And just before she could speak, she would wake up, sweating, breathing heavily, heart pounding like something inside her had tried to break free. Each dream left her weaker in understanding, but stronger in something else. The forest no longer let her go. Arya tried to avoid the forest after that, but the forest did not avoid her. Whenever she walked near its edge, the wind would shift. Leaves would fall even when there was no breeze. And once, when she tried to turn away and return to the village, she stopped, because she heard it. A voice. Not spoken. Not human. But something deep inside the trees calling her name. Not loudly. Not forcefully. But as if it already knew her. And was waiting. It happened 3 nights later. The moon was thin that night, barely visible through the clouds. Arya had gone into the forest only to collect herbs for a sick villager. She told herself it would be quick, safe, familiar. But the forest was different. Too quiet. Even the insects had stopped. That was when she felt it. Movement behind her. Then another. Arya turned slowly and saw them. Hunters. Not from the village. Not ordinary men. These were trained trackers, mercenaries who hunted creatures of the forest for gold. Their weapons were marked with silver edges, designed specifically to wound wolves. But they were not looking for wolves tonight. They were looking for her. How far did she get? One of them whispered. She's the one Lucian described. At the sound of that name, Aria's breath tightened. Lucian. She did not know who he was, but something inside her reacted instantly, like a warning. The hunters stepped closer. We take her alive, one said. The council wants proof. Arya stepped backward slowly, Her heart began to race. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew one thing. She was being hunted. Then one of them moved. Fast. Too fast. A net flew through the air toward her. Arya tried to run, but something inside her snapped. Not fear. Not panic. Something deeper. Something ancient. The moment the net touched her shoulder, the world changed. A sound erupted from Arya's chest. Not a scream of pain. Not a cry for help. But something raw. Something powerful enough to shake the air itself. The forest went silent. The wind stopped. Even the hunters froze mid-step. And then it happened. The scream. It tore through the trees like thunder breaking open the sky. Invisible force spread outward in every direction. Leaves lifted off the ground. Branches bent violently. The hunters were thrown backward as if struck by an unseen wave. But something far more shocking followed. From deep within the forest, howls answered. Dozens. Then hundreds. Wolves. Every wolf within miles suddenly stopped moving. And one by one, they lowered their heads. They knelt. Without command. Without reason. As if responding to something they had never seen before, but had always feared. Arya stood in the center of it all, trembling. Her chest rising and falling violently. Her vision blurred. And beneath her skin, the glowing mark on her wrist burned brighter than ever before. Silver light spread slowly through her veins. And for the first time in her life, she heard it. Not in a dream. Not in her mind. But inside her blood. A voice. Ancient. Deep. Awakening. The hunters crawled backward in terror, unable to stand. Because they realized something horrifying. They had not attacked a human girl. They had triggered something far older than the packs themselves. Far away, deep within Black Ridge territory, Alpha Kale suddenly stopped breathing mid-conversation. His wolf surged violently inside him. His eyes snapped toward the forest horizon. Because he felt it too. A power rising. A bond reactivating. And this time, it was no longer dormant. Arya was no longer just a rejected mate. She was becoming something the world had not seen in centuries. And the Wolf King prophecy had just begun to awaken. Arya should not have survived the forest that night. That was the first thought that crossed Alpha Ronin's mind when he found her. She was lying near the edge of an old hunting path, half conscious, her body trembling as if something inside her was still burning long after the attack had ended. The ground around her was disturbed. Broken branches. Scattered footprints. And signs of panic so strong even a blind wolf could sense it. Whatever had happened here was not normal. Ronin approached slowly. Not like a hunter. Not like a predator. But like someone trying to understand a situation that didn't make sense. He crouched beside her. The air around her felt strange. Not dangerous. Not weak. Something else. Something ancient. Aria's breathing was uneven. Her wrist was still faintly glowing with that silver mark, though she had no strength left to hide it. Ronin's eyes narrowed the moment he saw it. He had seen markings before. Pack symbols. Blood curses. War scars. But this was different. This was not something carved. It was something awakened. A quiet realization formed in his mind. Silver blood. The rare bloodline spoken of only in fragments among the oldest werewolf records. A bloodline tied to the Wolf King prophecy. Ronin had spent years searching for signs of it. Not out of fear, but out of necessity. Because unlike Black Ridge, his pack did not believe in ignoring ancient warnings. They believed in controlling them, using them. But as Ronin looked at Arya now, something unexpected happened. He did not feel ownership. He did not feel greed. He felt hesitation. Because she was not an object. Not a weapon. Not a legend. She was a girl who had clearly been through something she did not yet understand. Ronin reached out slowly. Arya flinched before she even opened her eyes. A reflex. Not trust. Not safety. Survival. "It's okay," he said quietly. His voice was calm. Controlled. not demanding. Arya forced her eyes open. Everything was blurred at first. The first thing she saw was a silhouette standing against the dim forest light. Tall. Still. Not attacking. Not moving closer. Just waiting. Her instincts screamed at her to run. But her body wouldn't obey. She was too weak. Too exhausted. Ronin noticed the tension in her breathing. He did not step forward. He stepped back. That single action changed something in the silence between them. For the first time since the attack, someone gave her space. "You're safe," he said again. Aria's voice barely came out. "Who are you?" Ronin studied her carefully. Then he answered, "Someone who is not here to take anything from you." That was the first lie she had heard that did not feel like a trap. But she did not trust it. Not yet. Ronin noticed the hesitation. He understood it. A girl like her, injured, hunted, confused, would not trust easily. Especially not in a forest like this. Especially not after what she had just experienced. He glanced at her wrist again. The silver mark was still faintly visible. That was confirmation enough. But still, he did not move to claim her. Did not call guards. Did not summon wolves. Instead, he removed his cloak and placed it beside her. Then he spoke again. "You're bleeding. Rest." Arya stared at him, confused, because this was not how hunters behaved. Not how alphas behaved. Not how anyone in her experience behaved. She tried to sit up, but pain forced her back down. Ronin did not react to her struggle. He simply remained where he was, watching, not controlling, just observing. Minutes passed. Then Arya spoke again, softer this time. "Why are you helping me?" Ronin did not answer immediately, because the truth was not simple. He had been searching for something most packs considered myth, a bloodline that could awaken or destroy entire territories. And now, it was lying in front of him, injured and unaware of what she was. But instead of speaking about prophecy or power, he chose something different. "Because you are not in a condition to answer questions," he said calmly. "And because I don't make decisions for people who cannot stand yet." That sentence landed differently. Arya looked at him more closely now, not as a threat, but as something unfamiliar. Something she had not felt since the night of the rejection. The silence between them stretched again. Then slowly, Arya asked the question she could not hold back. "Are you going to take me back to them?" Ronin's expression shifted slightly, just enough for her to notice. "Black Ridge." Arya did not answer, but her silence was enough. Ronin looked away for a moment, as if thinking. Then he shook his head. "No." That single word carried weight. Not mercy, not pity, a decision. Arya blinked. "Why?" Ronin turned back to her, and this time, his voice lowered slightly. "Because what he was about to say mattered. Because if they find you in this condition, they will not see a person. They will see a key." Arya didn't understand, but something inside her reacted to that word. "Key." Ronin continued. "And I don't believe keys should be forced open." A long silence followed. For the first time, Arya did not feel like she was being chased. Not like she was being studied like prey. Not like she was a mistake that needed correcting. Instead, she felt something far more dangerous. Safety. Ronin slowly stood. "I will take you somewhere safe," he said. "But not unless you choose it." Arya stared at him, confused. Because no alpha had ever given her a choice. Not Kale. Not the pack. Not the hunters. No one. And yet this stranger, this rival alpha, was doing exactly that. Ronin turned slightly, giving her space again. "If you want to come with me, stand up," he said simply. "And if you don't, I will leave you here with supplies and protection wards around this area." Aria's breath slowed. She didn't know what to think. Every instinct told her to distrust him. But every moment she spent with him contradicted everything she thought she knew about wolves. The forest was still silent. The silver mark on her wrist pulsed faintly. And somewhere far away, Deep within Black Ridge territory, Alpha Kale suddenly stopped mid-step. His wolf snarled internally, because the bond he thought he had buried had just shifted direction. And for the first time, it was no longer only pulling toward Arya. It was reacting to someone standing beside her. A rival. A decision was forming. And whatever Arya chose next would not only change her fate, but trigger a war between two alphas who now both understood one truth. She was no longer just a human girl. She was the center of something the entire werewolf world had been waiting to awaken. Back at Black Ridge, something had begun to change. At first, it was subtle. So subtle that only the oldest wolves noticed it. The wind inside the territory felt different. Not colder, not warmer, just unstable. The natural rhythm of the land, the way prey moved, the way rivers flowed, the way wolves sensed each other across distance, had begun to break. It was as if the forest itself no longer recognized Black Ridge as a stable pack. And at the center of it all was Alpha Kale, the first sign of instability. It started during a routine patrol. Kale was leading a group of warriors along the eastern border when it happened. A deer passed nearby. Normally, it would have fled instantly, but instead, it froze. It stared directly at Kale, then collapsed.
Dead.
No wound, no struggle, just silence. The warriors looked at each other in confusion, but Kale felt it immediately. A pressure inside his chest, a distortion in his wolf's instincts. Something inside him was misaligned. That night, it got worse. Kale's wolf begins to break. In his private quarters, Kale tried to shift into his wolf form. It should have been instant, natural, controlled. But the transformation stalled halfway. His bones shifted unevenly. His breathing became sharp and unstable. And, for the first time in his life, his wolf resisted him. Kale dropped to one knee, gripping the ground as pain shot through his body. Inside his mind, his wolf was no longer calm. It was restless, conflicted, searching. And the only thing it kept repeating was the same word it had whispered the night of the harvest moon.
Mate.
Kale clenched his jaw. No, he growled under his breath. But denial no longer worked, because something had already changed. The bond had not disappeared. It had fractured. The territory weakens. Within days, Black Ridge began to suffer consequences no one could explain. The hunting grounds grew empty. Rivers that once flowed clean became shallow and unpredictable. Even the wolves began to behave differently. Younger warriors lost focus during training. Experienced hunters missed simple tracks. And worst of all, fear began spreading through the pack. Not fear of enemies. Fear of something internal. Something they could not see. The council gathered urgently. Elders who had served under 3 previous alphas now sat in uneasy silence, because they had seen this pattern before in ancient records, but they had never expected to see it in their lifetime. One elder finally spoke. The land is reacting to an imbalance. Another shook his head. That is impossible. The alpha is strong. But a third voice interrupted. Strength does not matter if the bond is broken. Silence followed, because everyone understood what that meant. A mate bond, once formed, was not just emotional. It was spiritual, and if disrupted, it could destabilize the alpha himself. The council investigates the prophecy. The elders reopen sealed records buried deep beneath Black Ridge archives. Records no living wolf had read in decades. Scrolls older than the current territory, written in fragmented, fading ink. Hours passed in silence as they studied the texts, until finally, one elder froze. His hand trembled slightly as he pointed to a passage. No, he whispered. Another elder leaned closer, and his expression darkened immediately, because the prophecy was no longer just legend. It was a warning. The text read, "When the chosen alpha rejects his destined mate, the wolf king does not sleep. He fractures." The room went silent. Then another line was uncovered. And this one changed everything. Only the blood of the rejected mate can restore the rising king. One of the elders stepped back. That means he couldn't finish the sentence. But everyone already knew. Kale's transformation, the rise of the wolf king within him, was not only dependent on power. It required Arya, the human girl he had rejected, the truth no one wanted to say. The council reconvened immediately. This time, Kale was present. He did not look like himself. His eyes carried strain. His movements were controlled but tense. Even his wolf energy felt unstable, like something inside him was struggling to stay whole. An elder stepped forward carefully. Alpha Kale, we have confirmed something from the ancient texts. Kale did not respond. The elder continued anyway. Your mate bond was not just emotional alignment. It was the trigger. Kale's jaw tightened slightly. The elder hesitated before speaking the next words. And by rejecting her, you interrupted the awakening. Silence. Kale's voice came low. Interrupted what awakening? No one answered immediately, because the truth was dangerous. Finally, the eldest council member spoke. The Wolf King. The air in the chamber changed instantly. Kale's wolf surged internally. The walls felt closer. The silence is heavier. The elder continued. The prophecy does not speak of a king that rises alone. It speaks of a bond, a balance between alpha and mate. And yours has been broken. Kale's eyes darkened. Fix it, he said simply. But the elder shook his head. We cannot. Only she can restore it. The realization. For the first time since the harvest moon, Kale felt something he had not expected. Not anger, not control, not dominance, but something closer to uncertainty. Because the council was not speaking in theory. They were speaking in consequence. Arya was not just a rejected mate. She was now the only key to stabilizing his wolf. Without her, the alpha of Black Ridge would continue to fracture. And the entire pack would follow. Kale slowly turned away from the council chamber. His steps were steady, but inside him, his wolf was no longer calm. It was pulling again, strongly, in one direction, toward the forest, toward the unknown, toward the girl he had tried to erase from his fate. And for the first time, Alpha Kale understood something terrifying. Rejecting Arya had not freed him. It had bound him more tightly than before. And somewhere far beyond Black Ridge territory, Arya stood beside a rival alpha, unaware that the entire fate of the pack she left behind was now collapsing toward her return. The discovery did not come gently. It came like a fracture, a breaking point inside Black Ridge that could no longer be ignored. Alpha Kale had returned to the council chamber after the prophecy revelation, but this time he was not searching for answers about Arya. He was searching for the reason everything had fallen apart in the first place. Because deep down, something about the prophecy did not feel like fate alone. It felt arranged. The suspicion begins. Kale stood alone in the archived chamber beneath Black Ridge. The air was cold here, older than the rest of the pack. Every alpha before him had walked through this place at least once in their lifetime. But tonight, Kale was not here for tradition. He was here for the truth. On the stone table in front of him lay sealed documents from the Harvest Moon ceremony. Reports, witness statements, council approvals, all of them pointing toward the same conclusion. Arya had been marked as dangerous before Kale ever met her. He narrowed his eyes. Something was wrong, because he did not remember ever seeing those warnings before the ceremony. Not once. The missing evidence. Kale opened the first file, then the second, then the third. Each one contained references to Arya being connected to an enemy pack. Each one claimed she had been seen near restricted borders. Each one suggested she was a threat. But the deeper Kale looked, the clearer it became. The writing style was inconsistent. The ink density changed across pages. Some signatures even duplicated known council members, but slightly off. Too perfect to be real. too controlled to be natural. Kale's jaw tightened. This was not intelligence gathered by the pack. This was constructed. The name that kept appearing. There was one constant across all reports. One name listed as the primary source of intelligence. Beta Lucian.
Kale paused.
For a moment he did not move. He read it again. Then again. The silence in the archive chamber grew heavier. Slowly, Kale stood up. Something inside him shifted. Not anger yet. Not fully. But recognition. Because Lucian had been present at every key moment leading up to the rejection. Every suggestion. Every warning. Every quiet push toward distrust. Kale had assumed it was loyalty. Now it felt like something else entirely. Lucian was summoned within the hour. He arrived calmly. Too calmly. As if he already knew why he was there. The council chamber was full, but silent. No one spoke as Lucian stepped into the center. Kale stood at the far end. Still. Watching. Lucian bowed slightly. Alpha, he said. Kale did not return the gesture. Instead, he placed the documents on the table. They slid across the stone surface and stopped directly in front of Lucian. Explain this, Kale said. Lucian glanced down. For a brief moment, nothing changed in his expression. Then something subtle shifted. Not fear. Not panic. Calculation. He lifted his gaze. These are old reports, Lucian said calmly. Kale's voice dropped. You forged them. A ripple went through the council. Lucian exhaled slowly. I advised the council based on available intelligence. Kale stepped forward. The intelligence was false. Lucian did not respond immediately. That silence was louder than any denial. One elder spoke from the side. Beta Lucian, is this true? Lucian finally turned slightly toward the council. And for the first time,
his voice changed.
Not defensive. Not uncertain. Controlled. If I did not intervene, he said, you would have allowed a human to bond with your alpha. Murmurs spread instantly. Kale's eyes darkened. That was not your decision to make. Lucian met his gaze. It was necessary. The chamber fell into tense silence. Lucian continued, his voice steady. There are forces within our history you refuse to acknowledge. The silver bloodline. The prophecy of the Wolf King. At the mention of it, several elders stiffened. Lucian noticed, then continued. You think it is a blessing. I see it as a collapse. Kale's wolf stirred violently inside him. Lucian stepped closer to the center. If the Wolf King rises fully, alpha authority ends. The council becomes irrelevant. The beta position disappears entirely. His eyes locked on Kale. And you know it. Kale's voice dropped dangerously. So you manipulated my mate bond. Lucian did not deny it. Instead, he said something far worse. I protected the pack. Then Kale spoke again. By lying? Lucian's expression remained firm. By preventing destruction. The room erupted into chaos. Voices overlapped. Wolves argued. Elders shouted. But Kale raised one hand. Silence returned instantly. The collapse of trust. Kale walked slowly toward Lucian. Each step measured. Controlled. But heavy with something no one in the room could ignore. When he stopped, his voice was low. You did not protect the pack. Lucian did not move. Kale continued. You protected your influence. The words landed hard. Even the council went silent. Lucian's jaw tightened slightly. Kale's gaze sharpened. And, because of that, I rejected my mate. And now the pack is breaking. Lucian did not respond immediately. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his expression. Because Kale was not wrong. The territory was weakening. The bond was fractured. And Arya was gone. Kale stepped back slowly. You didn't just lie to me, he said. You changed the course of fate. The council erupted again. This time not in confusion, but in anger. Some wolves turned toward Lucian. Others questioned everything he had ever influenced. The structure of Black Ridge itself began to shake, not physically, but politically. Trust collapsed in real time. But Lucian was no longer listening,
because he understood something now.
something too late to reverse. Kale had already bonded with Arya. Even if rejected, even if broken, the connection had awakened something irreversible. And now, she was gone. Lucian finally spoke again, quieter this time. You don't understand what she is. Kale's eyes narrowed. Lucian looked toward the exit of the chamber. She was never just a mate. Then added, she was the trigger. Kale turned sharply, but Lucian was already stepping back. And now that she is gone, his voice lowered. You will all learn what happens when the Wolf King has no anchor. By the time Kale reached the edge of the territory that night, the forest was silent. No scent, no trace, no path. Arya had vanished completely, and with her disappearance, something inside Kale's wolf surged violently. Not rage, not grief, but imbalance. The bond was still there, but it had nowhere to go. Behind him, Black Ridge continued to fall into unrest. Inside him, something ancient continued to wake. And far beyond the borders of his broken pack, Arya walked beside a rival alpha who had not yet told her everything he knew. Not about her blood, not about her mark, and not about the fact that every step she took away from Black Ridge was pushing the world closer to the rise of something no pack would be able to control. In the silence of the rival lands, beneath a sky heavy with shifting clouds, two worlds finally collided. Kale had crossed every boundary to find her, not as an alpha arriving with authority, but as a wolf returning to the source of everything he had lost. And when he saw her, he knew immediately. Arya was no longer the same girl. Her presence had changed. The air around her no longer felt human. It felt ancient. Her silver eyes glowed faintly beneath the dim light, not reflecting the world, but reacting to it, as if something inside her had finally stopped sleeping. And beside her stood Alpha Ronin, not guarding her, not blocking her, just present.
Calm.
Controlled. Observing Kale, without hostility. As if this moment had been expected long before it ever arrived. Kale's wolf stirred violently. Not in rage, but in recognition of what had already shifted. The bond was still there, but it was no longer simple. It was unstable, alive in ways Kale could no longer suppress. Kale took one step forward, then another. But Ronin did not move, did not challenge, did not assert dominance. Instead, he turned slightly toward Arya, and for the first time in this confrontation, he gave her something no alpha was ever trained to give. Space. And then, without raising his voice, without demanding attention, without trying to influence the outcome, he spoke. She chooses her own fate. The words did not echo like a command. They settled like truth. Heavy. Final. Unavoidable. Kale stopped. Because that was not how rival alphas behaved. Not in any recorded history of their kind. Ronin was not fighting for her. He was not claiming her. He was not using her as leverage. He was acknowledging her autonomy. And that changed everything. Kale turned his gaze back to Arya. The forest around them felt still. Even the wind seemed hesitant. Arya stood between two paths that could no longer be separated from consequence. One alpha represented what she had lost. The rejection. The humiliation. The breaking of a bond she once believed defined her existence. The other represented what she had become. Not owned, not discarded, but seen. Kale's voice broke the silence. I need you to understand something. Arya did not respond immediately, but she listened. Kale's expression tightened. The weight of everything he had buried finally surfaced. I didn't reject you because you were human. I rejected you because I was afraid. Ronin's gaze shifted slightly, but he remained silent. Kale continued. Afraid of what the bond would do to me. His eyes darkened. Afraid of losing control of my power, my identity, everything I was trained to be. And I chose control over you. Silence followed. Not empty, not peaceful, but revealing. Aria's silver eyes did not flicker, but something inside her changed. Not anger, not softness. Understanding. For the first time, the truth no longer felt like betrayal alone. It felt like fear.
Human.
Wolf. Alpha. All the same in its origin. The weight of awakening. The forest around them reacted subtly. A shift in pressure. A tightening of energy. Because something unseen was responding to the confrontation. The bond. Not broken. Not healed. But active. And unstable. Ronin finally spoke again, quietly. The Wolf King does not awaken through dominance. His gaze moved between Kale and Arya. It awakens through balance. Kale's jaw tightened. Arya remained still, because she could feel it now too. Something inside her had changed since the moment she awakened in the forest. The silver in her eyes was not fading. It was deepening, growing more stable, more aware, as if her body had begun responding to something larger than herself. Something waiting for a decision. Kale took another step forward. Slower this time. Careful. I came here to fix what I broke, he said. His voice was no longer commanding, only honest. Ronin did not interrupt. Aria's gaze shifted slightly toward Kale, then toward Ronin. Two alphas. Two paths. Two versions of a future she never asked for. Kale continued. I cannot undo the past, but I can stop running from what the bond made me see. His voice lowered. And I am not asking you to choose me, because I deserve it. I am asking because the world is changing, and only the truth between us can stabilize what is coming. Ronin's expression remained calm, but his silence spoke louder than any challenge, because he understood something Kale had only just realized. This was no longer about rivalry. It was about consequence. The moment the world waits for. Arya stood between them, and for the first time since her rejection, she was not confused, not lost, not searching for meaning in others' decisions. She was aware, fully, completely, of what she had become. The forest around them felt alive with anticipation. Even the air seemed to hold its breath, because somewhere beyond the borders of both packs, something ancient was responding, waiting, listening. The Wolf King was not a story anymore. It was a reaction. And the trigger stood in the center of the clearing.
Kale.
Ronin.
Arya.
Three forces tied together by something none of them fully controlled. And the entire werewolf world, unseen, unheard, but deeply aware, was waiting for the choice that would determine what rose next. Because whoever Arya chose would not simply win her. They would awaken the Wolf King. The forest did not move. Not even the wind. It was as if the world itself had been pulled into a moment that could not continue until a choice was made. Arya stood at the center of it all. Not as a human. Not as a rejected mate. Not as a runaway from one pack into another. But as something neither Kale nor Ronin fully understood anymore. Her silver eyes were no longer just glowing. They were reacting.
To them.
To the bond. To the fracture. To the truth that had been buried under fear, control, and betrayal. Kale took one slow step forward. Ronin did not stop him. But he also did not move away. Because both alphas understood something now. This was no longer about rivalry. It was about consequence. Aria's voice finally broke the silence. Quiet, but steady. I was not born to be chosen. Arya continued. I was not born to be rejected. Her gaze shifted briefly to Kale, then to Ronin. I was not born to belong to anyone. The air around her tightened. The silver glow beneath her skin intensified. Kale's wolf growled internally, not in aggression, but in instability. Something inside him was responding violently to her presence. Ronin felt it too, but his reaction was different, controlled, measured, like someone witnessing a truth he had already suspected. Arya stepped forward. One step, then another, and with each movement, the ground beneath her feet seemed less like earth, and more like a memory, like something ancient was remembering her before she even existed. Her voice lowered, but something was born the night I was rejected. Silence deepened. Even Kale stopped moving. Arya lifted her hand slightly. The silver mark on her wrist became visible again. Not faint, not unstable, but complete, like a seal breaking open. I felt it, she whispered. The moment the bond broke, something else woke up inside me. The forest responded. Distant wolves began howling. Not in warning, but in recognition. Kale's expression changed. Slowly. Because he realized something terrifying. It was not only his wolf reacting to her. It was every wolf. Everywhere. Ronin's voice broke the silence for the first time. Arya. But she did not look at him. She was no longer focused on either alpha. Her gaze lifted slightly toward the sky, where the moon was beginning to shift behind clouds. I don't choose you, she said softly. Kale froze. I don't choose him. Ronin did not react. He simply watched. Aria's voice became quieter, but heavier. I choose the truth. The moment those words left her lips, the silver light beneath her skin exploded outward. Not as destruction, but as expansion. A wave of pressure spread through the forest. The trees bent. The ground trembled. Every wolf within miles dropped instinctively to the ground. Not because they were commanded, but because something older than command had awakened. Kale fell to one knee, not in defeat, but in resistance. His wolf howled internally. Ronin remained standing, but his eyes narrowed, because he understood what was happening before Kale did. This isn't a bond reaction, Ronin whispered. This is the source. Aria's body lifted slightly from the ground, not floating, not flying, but suspended, as if reality itself could no longer decide where she belonged. Her eyes opened fully, and for a brief moment, they were no longer silver. They were something deeper, something endless. The Wolf King had begun to awaken, not inside Kale, not inside Ronin, but through Arya, the truth no one understood. A voice echoed, not spoken aloud, but felt across the mind of every wolf in existence. Old, heavy, ancient, not male, not female, not human, not wolf. Something before both. The truth revealed itself in fragments. The Wolf King was not a ruler, not a warrior, not a single alpha reborn. It was a balance, a convergence, a force that awakened only when the bond between dominance and rejection collapsed completely. Kale's rejection had not broken Arya. It had unlocked her. Ronin's protection had not saved her. It had stabilized her. And now, both forces were collapsing into her at once. Kale's voice broke through the pressure. What are you? Arya did not answer immediately, because even she did not fully understand anymore. But something inside her did. And it answered, not aloud, but through the world itself. The forest darkened, then brightened, then stilled, and Arya spoke, not as a girl, but as something becoming more. I am what remains when control ends. I am what rises when fear breaks. Her gaze lowered slightly, and for the first time, both alphas felt it clearly. The shift, not in power, but in existence. Kale's wolf bowed instinctively. Ronin's stance tightened, because even he could not deny what was unfolding. Arya was no longer becoming the Wolf King. She was the moment it fully awakened. The ground beneath them cracked slightly, not violently, but as if reality itself was splitting under pressure too great to contain.
Kale tried to stand,
but failed. Not because he was weak, but because something inside him no longer recognized hierarchy. Ronin stepped back slightly.
for the first time.
Not in fear, but understanding. Because the era of alpha dominance had ended in that moment. Arya turned her head slowly toward both of them, And when she spoke again, her voice carried no anger, no sadness, no conflict, only truth. You built your world on control. But I was never meant to live inside it. The silver light expanded again, wider,
Deeper.
far beyond the forest, beyond the packs, beyond the boundaries of territory. And in that expansion, every wolf in existence felt it. The awakening had completed, not of a person, but of a force. Kale lifted his eyes one final time. Ronin did the same. And Arya was no longer standing on the ground. She was above it, between worlds, between identities, between what was and what would no longer exist. The wind finally returned, but it was different, heavier, older, alive in a way the forest had never been before. And then, Arya whispered one final line, not to Kale, not to Ronin, but to the world itself. This is not the rise of a king. This is the return of what the kings feared. The silver light engulfed everything. The forest disappeared. The wolves across the land went silent at the exact same moment. And the story did not end. It transformed, because the Wolf King had awakened, and no one was prepared for what it truly was.